All right, welcome to the December 4th AnonCreds Working Group meeting. We'll probably have one more AnonCreds meeting probably in 2 weeks for the year. We'll see how it goes, and I'll certainly have one next week if we need to coordinate practical things. I'll talk more about that as we finish off of what I'm looking to do before the end of the year. Few things to talk about, in particular, getting to the W3C verifiable credentials wrap up of the AnonCreds RS work. I know Artem's very close and team. Also talk about, if we can, the credential and present proof attachment formats. So hopefully Timo is starting to work on that, and we'll see what progress and how we can help with that. A couple of PRs on the AnonCreds spec. And then talking a bit about V2 work that's happening. Reminder, this is in Linux Foundation, Hyperledger Foundation meeting, so the antitrust policy is in effect from the Linux Foundation and the code of conduct from the Hyperledger. Anything to add to the agenda? Anything people want to go over? For those who missed Mike and I chatting, Mike's got a super interesting paper that he's found from the PS signatures creators, Poincheval and Sanders, about a extension to PS signatures that allows hiding of who the issuer is while still verifying that the issuer is part of a set, which is very interesting. So we were talking about a couple of ways that could be used. Okay, other than that, no other announcements. Artem, do you want to take over? I don't know if you want to show anything, but where you are with the AnonCreds in Rust?
I don't have something to show today. Last week we did some cleanup in our merge requests. We added more tests. We updated, first of all, updated demo tests to work with both W3C and legacy formats, each of them, and we added several tests for services, for verifier and credential conversion. I have a question regarding our merge request. Currently, there are 4 or 5 opened merge requests. Some of them contain feature functionality. Should we keep them separate or merge all into a single PR?
I would say, I think we're fine to keep them separate, I think. But what would you prefer?
The reason why I'm asking, because when we do some cleanup and refactoring in the main implementation branch, we have to sync all rest of the PRs.
There has been a review as we've gone. I think we're ready to merge. From what I'm understanding, we're ready to merge. What would you prefer to see happen? Merge as soon as possible so that you can finish the cleanup, or consolidate them on your own? I think because we've done, I think my leaning would be, let's merge them, as you would like to see them merged.
Of course, for me, I would like to see them merge, and I also interested in getting some feedback, probably from Timo, if they started integration, maybe some notes from their side, and we can process them in future. But I would like to get at least main implementation get merged. It will be easier to see difference, what changed in encoding and drop mapping merge requests.
Okay, let me sort of ping the maintainers I know Andrew's been spending a lot, has been reviewing it. I mean, the big thing, Timo, particularly for you and Animo, is making sure that the interface is what you want. And there's nothing about the interface. So if you could take a look at that. And we can get those merged. So I would say early this week we'll get we'll get feedback / merging of that, of particularly the main one.
I think the main one in Rust has been reviewed already quite extensively.
Yeah.
So if we can get that one merged, because the other ones were a lot smaller, then we can get those probably merged very quickly also, and then we keep the wrappers one open, and then we take a look at that over the week, but that we aim to get the 3, I think, Rust ones merged at least this week.
Yeah. Okay. Let's aim to get a I'll get make sure the reviewers go over that. I know it's been done. We don't have any approvals yet, so let's push to get the approvals done. Certainly get that one merged. And then the others are smaller, as you say, and we can get those as well. I know Andrew would want to take a quick pass through this proof value encoding. I think he's looked at it already, but I'll verify that. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then I assume, Artem, you're pretty close to wrapping up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So Timo, you didn't have a chance to get through any of the attachment work.
No,
So
I meant to do that today, but
okay,
didn't get to it.
Yeah, no problem. As soon as you can, even just a quick overview of your thinking, because and in particular, the stuff that I don't have a clue on, that I haven't thought well enough, is how to get you know, JWT and SDJOT formats in there.
Yeah, I think SDJOT is not going to be included. So it's
sorry.
Yeah, because that's a whole different structure again, and then we're, I think,
protocol. Yeah, no problem. But JOTs in particular, you're right. I just jumped to the two, but you're right, just JOTs. Yeah, so if you have, you know, a variation, just a quick overview of what you're thinking, we could go from there. Okay.
Yeah.
AnonCreds spec, Mike, you still haven't approved this one. Are you happy with this one?
Oh, I thought I did. That's the one I actually marked close. I need to go.
Exactly. You
let me do it right now.
You re-looked at it, said it was good, but you didn't approve it. Okay, so if you could just approve that one, we'll get that one in. I think this one is pretty straightforward. So again, if you could do just a quick pass while we're on the call, that could do it. Artem, on this one, I just added a comment a few minutes ago. I read through it. Mike approved it, so that's good. The only thing I didn't think that's covered enough is the use of message pack. So I added that as a comment, that I looked in it and all you've got is reference to message pack, no mention of the spec or any sort of narrative on how message pack is being used. Does that make sense to add a paragraph on that?
Yeah, definitely. I'll add this information.
Okay.
More details.
Yeah. And then I saw a bunch of things like how, you know, there's not very many refs and defs. and I can just do that as part of the pass I'm already planning on doing on the whole spec. So I don't think, I found just a couple of minor things and just not worth tracking in a comment. So I would say just after that, we'll be good to go. Okay. Well, that was easy. As I say, I was thinking we'd, unless we need to, I think have one more conversation 2 weeks from now for December. My plan is during that time, I'm going to do a final pass through the spec. Once these last PRs get merged that are open, I'm going to do a sort of def and ref pass where I make consistent the definitions and the use of the refs through the specification, and then a final editorial cleanup completing just adjusting everything that I can see. Artem, I liked how you use the inserts. I want to see how those look, inserting code. And so might do some cleanup on that and just editorial cleanup. But as far as I know, I think we're pretty much done. And I'd really like to get that finalized. So that's my plan, is to finish off entirely that the spec. One thing I wanted to bring up was encoding. We're doing auto encode, or at least some work has been done to say, oh, we don't need the encoded values in the spec, or sorry, in the documents, in the credential and in the presentation, because the encoding is defined. What do we think of dropping encoding entirely from being done by the issuer, or if done by the issuer, that it actually be verified in the processing, not included in the data, sorry, not included in the W3C version, included in the existing, but only as sort of backwards compatibility, but that we enforce in the library the encoding scheme that's being done outside. Do you think that's something that should be done now? Do it only in the W3C format, or does it just not matter? Any thoughts?
Does the library currently encode stuff or not?
So the way it was originally built, the issuer encodes, and then the verifier should, and that's part of the problem here, the verifier should make sure that the holder has passed raw values that match the encoding. And so a cleanup would be that the library actually checks the encoding. So I think the original idea was that by leaving it to the issuer to encode, we could do things in the future for encoding, but we've got it to the point that you must use a certain encoding mechanism. The encoding is very well defined, because the only way to be interoperable is for everyone to use the same encoding. And so the thought is to push that encoding into the library instead of relying on what the issuer says. So if the issuer doesn't follow the proper encoding scheme, reject the credential. In the W3C format, what Artem and team have already done is drop the encoding and left it as auto. Meaning that the encoding is calculated on the fly, and to do that in the verification. And if it's doing it already, good.
I know AnonCreds 2 automatically does it.
Exactly. And a core of AnonCreds 2 is to say, here's what we're going to do for encoding. We're going to be very explicit about it. And, you know, it's late in the game for changing anything, but I'm just thinking that we should enforce in the library that the encoding is right, and enforce in the verification that the encoding be, you know, part of the library. Okay.
If AnonCreds 2 already does it, I'm totally support dropping it from W3C format as well.
Yeah.
And does it internally.
Yeah. Okay. So basically look at, I'll try to write it up what I'm looking for and as an issue, and then we'll see who can implement that piece, that adjustment, so that encoding becomes library responsibility versus either the issuer doesn't have to do it. It's acceptable if the issuer doesn't do it, but even if the issuer does do it, that it be checked and rejected if it doesn't match the proper encoding. Okay, I can take that from there. All right, that's all the discussion I had for this and pass. Is there anything else? All right. I think we're close enough that we can probably miss next week, but I will post anything. And Artem, if you need any help from the community to wrap up the work, but I think it's, you know, fantastic job that you've done, and I think we're ready to go with finalizing and merging that part. Again, Timo, anything you see in preparation for the work you're going to be doing, let us know. But other than that, let's get this wrapped up and done. All right. Thanks all.
Real quick before we go, there was a question in the chat, and I have the question too. Mike, can we get a link to that paper you were talking about at the beginning?
Yeah.
Sure.
If you got it, Mike, I got it handy, but I'd have to whip over to Discord. Oh, there was something else I talked about. Updates on AnonCreds V2. I missed that. So we've had interest from a few groups now that are looking at various things in AnonCreds and AnonCreds V2. I've had conversations and are going to be having conversations with several very large organizations, Hitachi and Oracle. We've got a student that wants to look at doing some work on the AnonCreds V2 to spit out all of the objects going along, so we can sort of take the AnonCreds V1 spec and build out the V2 spec in a similar way, so that we start to talk about, okay, here's what here's what all the data structures look like, and here's the processing that happens in the libraries to enable that. So that work is definitely starting up, but I want to see if we can push more on those. So there are to-dos in the specification. If you've got time to take a look at any of those, or suggestions on defining the work to clarify it, would like to see that happen. I'm going to try to see what I can do over the vacation and period to try to figure out how to move that forward and start to work on it. We're getting more interest in particularly merging, and I want to do it in a flexible way because the more I hear about PS signatures, but merging the BBS Plus signatures, the W3C format, and AnonCreds V2 capabilities, so that we have a strong way to come forward with the option of unlinkability and zero knowledge proof usage in VCs in the next generation that's beginning to roll out. So things like being able to issue an AnonCreds W3C format, potentially using OpenID for VCs and things like that, so that as the pressure ramps up on the privacy angles, we have options available that can be used. So that's the goal we're trying to get to. All right. With that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.